Let's just go ahead and dive right into this Devil's Den double murder. Look, what we have is we have this ex-school teacher, right? His name is Andrew McGann. He's 28 years old, and he was arrested back on July 30th. He's charged with 2 counts of capital murder in connection with the killings of Clinton and Kristen Brink, who were found dead on a walking trail in Devil's Den State Park in West Fort, Arkansas, back on Saturday, July 26th. Now, sadly, they were not alone. They had their 2 young daughters, ages 7 and 9 years old, with them. Fortunately, their daughters are unharmed, at least physically. Their mother, apparently being the hero that she was, took them to safety. The bad guy started attacking the father, and then the mother takes the kids to the car to get them out of harm's way, then goes back to check on her husband, where sadly she too was murdered. There's a lot of things that we can talk about in this case, like whether or not these children are going to be witnesses in the case, whether or not this case qualifies for the death penalty, just what's going to happen. Is there a motive? But before we get into all those things with our panel, we've got some very interesting video of his actual arrest. This guy was arrested in a barbershop in the middle of a haircut. Let's go ahead and take a look at that video, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Yeah, so there you have it. He's being handcuffed, and I've seen some pictures where it looks like half of his head is cut, and he's got long, shaggy hair on the other side. The barber, she was paying attention. She was watching the news, and she thought there was something creepy about this guy. And you've heard of see something, say something. Well, in her case, it was like see something, sweep something, because she was prepared to collect the hair that she cut off his head to provide it to investigators should it be needed. This is like nothing I've ever seen, Matt Murphy. You prosecuted a lot of cases. We don't know that there's a motive. We understand that he has confessed. We understand police have evidence from his car, from his home, that lead him to link him to the crime scene. If you're the prosecutor and this comes across your desk, what investigative steps are you going to take next to get it ready for trial? And in particular, what about these girls? Are they going to be witnesses? Are you going to put them on the stand 2 or 3 years from now? And how does that work?
Well, that's one of the most tragic things. And tragedy is not the right word, because he committed this, right? Tragedy is when somebody gets hit by a bus. But, with these little girls, 7 and 9, and I think my fellow panel members probably have had this experience too. When it comes to little kids, you have to do what's called qualify them. So you have to establish that they can tell the truth from a lie if you're going to call them to the stand. 7 and 9 is pretty clearly within that range. So witness-wise, almost certainly you're going to call them. The question is when. And in the press conference, the state police spokeswoman said she characterized his statements as an admission more than a confession, right, which I thought was really interesting, meaning maybe he admitted being there, but maybe he's got some spin to it. And there's a lot of details that we still don't know. But number one, this is the first thing that I would do if I was the prosecutor. Of course, you want search warrants on his computers, and you want to find out if there's anything indicating an interest possibly in the girls, whether there's robbery, whether there's some other, you're on a search for motive at this point. But the DA in this jurisdiction already announced he's going to seek the death penalty. And of course, this has death penalty written all over it. You've got 2 victims, which means the multiple murder aspect alone is a special circumstance in Arkansas. Even if this was a robbery gone wrong, it is a special circumstance, meaning it's qualified for the death penalty. And then if it goes death, I think that maybe the best place, if you're going to call one of those girls, I think you call the older one, and you do it in the penalty phase. And because the jury's allowed to consider. What if they're
an eyewitness, though, right? So what if you need them to come to court and to say, this is what I saw, this is what I heard? Because if he made an admission and not a full confession, maybe there's some gaps that need to be cleared up, and maybe they're the only eyewitnesses.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're talking about a 9-year-old, I wouldn't hesitate for a second in a case like this. I mean, it's brutal, but I don't think the testimony is going to be anything close to the trauma that they've already experienced in witnessing the slaughter of their 2 parents.
No.
Those are kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, you mentioned the presser. Let's go ahead and play SOT 1. We got Colonel Mike Hager discussing that this appears to be a completely random event. Let's just play SOT 1, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
We have no reason to believe that there was any known association between our suspect and our victims. There's nothing to indicate that at all. It appears to be a completely random event.
All right, Dave Aronberg. Look, you were the state's attorney in Florida, Palm Beach County for a long time. We all know, a lot of our audience knows that prosecutors aren't required to prove motive. And recently in the Kohberger case, we were all frustrated because we didn't know what the motive was. A lot of times, though, juries want to know what the motive is, right? So, Dave, if you're the prosecutor, what are you going to do to go back and see if there's some way that you can develop a motive on this case? Or are we left with it being something completely random without any other explanation?
Bill, you're right that the elements of this charge do not require motive, but the jurors always want to know the why. And that was an issue in the Kohberger case. Even though they had plenty of evidence against him, they had that guy dead to rights. I think the prosecutors were reluctant to go to trial, at least in part, because they couldn't figure out why he did it. And I think that's something prosecutors want to find out here. Why? Perhaps he's just a Kohberger type loner who is just a sociopath. After all, he's on this hiking trail, dressed in all black, wearing a backpack. It looks premeditated to me. It looks like he had some planning here, right? Which would qualify him for the death penalty as a first-degree murder charge, and it could be a aggravator. At least in Florida, it's an aggravator when you have a cold, calculated killing. So all that's going to be used against him. But as far as the why, I go back to what Matt said about looking through his phone and his searches, the internet searches, to try to see, is there a connection at all? And if there's not a connection directly with this couple or the kids, maybe there's a reason why he stalked people at a park, because there's now some evidence that he could be tied to another murder that is unsolved, the cold case in Vermont,
right,
of a dean of the university there at Vermont State. So this could be a guy who's like Kohberger, just some sociopath who wants to be a serial killer. And by the way, I don't know if you have it, but if you can show his mugshot. I've seen a lot of mugshots in my day. This rivals the Nick Nolte mugshot. This is, look at that guy. I mean, guilty.
Oh my God,
that's what I would say if I was a juror. I don't need to hear evidence. Guilty, just by the look at him.
Well, a lot of people like Kohberger, right? A lot of people said Kohberger was just, a weirdo. They weirded him out. They freaked. The barber who was cutting his hair said that she felt something was off about him. His eyes looked soulless. And we've got that's SOT 2. Let's go ahead and play that. This is the barber, Adriana Ruiz Avalos. Let's roll SOT 2.
As soon as I saw him, something fell off about him. He looked pretty scary. He didn't look like he was okay. He was very timid. He was always with his head down, long hair covering his face. His eyes just looked sunken. Pretty kind of like soulless is what I could describe.
All right. Well, clearly her opinions are not admissible in court. Now, what she saw and things that she observed might very well be, and she could be a witness. Like I said, this is a woman who watches true crime documentaries, and she said that she wanted to do her part to try to catch this guy if he was the one they were looking for. But what do you do with this kind of information? How do you present to a jury that this guy just had a weird personality? Because as we'll see here in a minute, I don't want to jump too far ahead, we'll see that he had problems, at least as a school teacher in Texas. He had some, let's just call it some strange behaviors that we're going to get to. But how do you present a witness like this who's got these feelings, and how do you try to sort of convey that to a jury? Let's start with you, Matt.
Well, and I know Dave has had this experience before too. One of the fascinating things about serial killers is you often hear people say that about their eyes. My Andrew James McGann case, I had every survivor that encountered that guy I think, without exception, made some comment about the way his eyes looked. And he's going to be there, so the jury's going to see that. Now, I don't think this woman is necessarily a critical witness. One thing, just quick funny side note, CNN ran a picture saying that he was still wearing his barber smock, his barber apron or whatever, which of course, they took that off there in the barbershop. I thought that was kind of funny. No hack on CNN. They were trying to put it all together, but they removed the clothing, of course, for forensic testing as soon as he's arrested. But that thing about the eyes is it is a really interesting feature about serial killers and about people. This soulless look. And boy, that mugshot, I'm with Dave 100% on that. That thing is, one of the things about serial killers is oftentimes they're like chameleons and they blend in. That guy looks like a serial killer, and I love that Nick Nolte. Yeah, it's got the same hair look, but of course this guy is. If he did it, and it sure sounds like he did, he is a real monster, and he looks like one. And
the other thing about serial killers is sometimes when they get arrested, maybe they've been active for a while and we just don't know it. And as Dave mentioned, he's being looked at in connection with maybe some other stuff elsewhere. But there's always these, let's just say, odd things in their background. In fact, 2 years ago, before he was arrested in this case, he alarmed some teachers, some parents about his teaching style at a Texas school. Let's go ahead and play shot 3 and we can talk about that on the other side.
He started to talk to me about just things that a 10-year-old might say that stuck out to him. Mr. McGann, loves to play tag at recess. He plays truth or dare with the girls. And then I started hearing these things like he's giving out candy. He gives candy out in class, but really it's for the girls. Or, he's bringing Sonic drinks sometimes to special girls in the class. And these are the sort of things that started unrolling throughout the year that got our spidey senses up as parents. So parents of girls who felt like their daughters were being groomed, who were in his class on a regular basis, went to the district. Some of these parents went to the school and the principal and the district and said, hey, there are inappropriate things happening in the classroom. A daughter sat in his lap in the classroom. A child overheard him speaking to a girl that he wished he could date her when she grew up.
What age?
These girls were 9 and 10.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So here's what I want to know. All right. Based on that, is it possible that the girls were his target?